Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Canada's podcast. I'm your host, Rivers Corbett, and based out of Atlantic, Canada, hanging out with rockstar entrepreneurs. And I got a goodie with us today, a great friend, a great colleague, a great supporter of the entrepreneurship ecosystem throughout the region, Mr. David Alston. Hanging out, if I remember correct, David, you're based at a homestead in Grand Bay.
Grand Bay, Westfield, yeah.
Yeah, hang on. Well, thanks so much for joining us today on Canada's podcast. Just thrilled to have you here. David, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't know him, which many do, I used to joke about the fact that I dream about an Atlantic Canada region where kids, before they go to bed, and you know you've heard me say this before, David, would say, I don't want to hear a fairy tale. I want to hear the story about David Alston. That's my joy.
Are you done with nightmare stories? So kids would be having nightmares all the time.
When you, sir, are embodying entrepreneurship in the region, and you were one of the founding members of Radiant 6. You were the entrepreneur in residence with the government of New Brunswick. You have been constantly helping the ecosystem move forward. And before I dive into what you're doing now, because we're not going to tell that Radiant 6 story. It's been told. We're not going to talk about stories about the contributions. We're going to talk about you, the entrepreneur, today. But before I begin, tell us what you're seeing about the entrepreneurship kind of atmosphere, infrastructure, community in Atlantic Canada. Just give us a high-level view from your perspective.
Well, it's been great to see all the entrepreneurs that I've been working with really adapt to, I guess, really what the pandemic threw at them in terms of, this massive disruption. I mean, the entire world has been hit the big old reset button. So every company had to go back to square one to figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to handle it. And, whenever there's a disruption, as you know, as an entrepreneur, that means there's an opportunity for the players and the rankings to shift. And so I think the smart entrepreneurs, the smart business owners are the ones that look at this and say, it's going to be a challenge, but there's also an opportunity to potentially grow, maybe adapt, take on something new, find new people, grow the organization, invent a new product, whatever it is. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in Atlantic Canada. No doubt, though, that of course there's certain sectors that have really been pummeled when it comes to, like the tourism sector and a few others, the food service sector, all that, hotels. I mean, though there is some rebound happening, it's certainly, they took a big hit. And, but I'm seeing that resilience. I think Atlantic Canadians have always had to be resilient because honestly, it's not like we have a massive market sitting right on our doorstep that we can kind of like sell to. We have to export, we have to find customers, we have to be innovative, we have to find, really creative ways and to keep the costs down and keep the quality up, or find ways to, bundle services together that maybe in other markets you don't have to do that. You can just kind of specialize. So I've seen a lot of resiliency. I've seen a lot of I don't know. It's been great. It's been really encouraging to see, honestly, to see how entrepreneurs have really reacted through this last couple of years.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of quote unquote whining. There seems to be a lot of let's get to it. Let's just figure this thing out forward. I don't know if you know Haley Bohan from Saint John. You probably do. She's a marketing guru in the region. Anyway, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a conversation with her. And she says, Rivers, she says, this is what entrepreneurs are made of. It's just another freaking day. It's just whether it's a lost customer or staff member, pandemic, whatever, we face this stuff all the time. So we get on with it, and it's pretty cool. So I agree with the resiliencies there, and we've kind of been doing that for decades and decades, being the underdog in our region, and I think that's really starting to shine now as we focus in on what do we do now. And interesting enough, of course, the quality of life now adds on. I mean, immigration is up in New Brunswick more than it's ever been, not necessarily because of countries, but because of the other people from Canada come and say, I want to hang out there. Looks like a cool spot.
Well, our region, Saint John, where I'm at, I don't think I've seen so many cranes in the skyline as I do right now. And again, I would never have predicted that a pandemic would be the time when the resurgence would be happening and the growth would be happening. I would not. I'm sure you and I would have bet money on that. Like you would assume it'd be all about contraction and
Totally.
Worry and like you gotta like sock your money away. But I think what we're seeing is like you said, a ton of demand of people moving to Atlantic Canada, to New Brunswick. They're seeing that quality of life. The whole aspect of work at home, work from anywhere is kicked in. So people are like, you know what? And affordability of homes. Certainly we've seen this a great influx starting to happen and continuing. And it's really up to us as Atlantic Canadians to figure out a way to continue to fan those flames in terms of growth and recognize that we've always had these amazing assets here. It's just people maybe just didn't recognize them. They weren't looking. So now they're looking. So now we need to make sure that we can find a way to meet that demand and continue to grow. I'm sure, you know what? There's no reason why New Brunswick can't be 1 million people, within the next 10 years or so. There's no reason. Really? No
reason at all. We sure have got the space, that's for sure.
Oh, you got lots of space, yeah.
And I think that's representative across the country, across the region too, in other areas. PEI may be a little bit more condensed, but definitely in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Well, look, you touched on a spot where you said you can work anywhere in now, but you recently pivoted, and when I say pivot, I don't know if it pivoted or just started a new direction. I mean, you were an IT guy. That's what your brand was based upon. And then you and your family and your colleagues started this thing called Timber Top Adventures, which is not about working anywhere. And yet, we were talking about earlier, your business actually thrived through the pandemic. So take us through the journey of Timber Top, because I, like many others, kind of looked at that twice. We said, David Alston's doing what? Because that's not who you are that we know. So why talk about Timber Top as the value proposition, and what intrigued you to put your resources behind it? Talk about that first 6 months.
Well, here's the thing. With me, I love building things. Okay. I love that part of the startup journey, the scene. Some people like the kind of the operations of a startup, once it starts to get in place, like they're more of an operator, where I'm more of a builder. So if you look back over my journey, yes, most of my kind of like adventures, no pun intended, were in the IT sector, but it was usually building things and then getting to the point where the thing was at an operational stage and then jumping to the next thing and building something. Right. I think you're a builder as well. I mean, you love building.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So for me, it was like, I've been doing a lot in the tech sector. But it was like, a part of me was, when I was a kid, I was outdoors all the time. That was my innovative building phase. I was building stuff across my dad's farm, my dad and mom's farm outside of Sussex, 200 acres, pond, trees, rivers, gravel pits, you name it, It was all kinds of stuff, barns, hay. So it was every morning you woke up and you're like, what am I going to build today? When am I going to go? I remember my poor dad having to deal with one building phase I went through, where I was building massive tunnels in kind of like underground, almost like igloos, out of the square bales of hay up in the hay mound. And so it was all summer long, build this entire network. And I'm sure if you had hit a microphone on my dad in the mow as he was going up to get the hay, he'd be falling through into all of these things, like, right? He'd be stepping on some of the shoof. He'd be like, oh, geez, because it was just riddled throughout the mow, right? But I mean, that was me. I always liked taking on something, being creative, thinking it through. And I love a challenge. As you know, when you start off with some brand new idea, there's a ton of unknown. There's a ton of learning that has to happen. Yes. Right? You're starting from zero often. And so if I went into another tech business, I wouldn't be starting at zero. So it wasn't as much, honestly. It'd be fun, but it wouldn't be as much fun as picking something that was completely opposite. But keep in mind, you also have to work on something you're passionate about, right? Mm-hmm. Generally, that's a good idea. So often a lot of your stuff you get into, I can see your passion. I can, you have different passions that you're involved in, and often cooking has got a piece of that, right? Or the chef or the food, there's something aspect of that. So with me, I mean, I'd really never explored the outdoor part in a long time since I was a kid. So I really started enjoying getting out into the woods. That first 6 months, honestly, was wandering around the woods, trying to figure things out, making phone calls, talking to different vendors that supplied that industry in the early adventure park business. And my philosophy of a startup is every day, try to find a way to kill the idea before you start it, before you actually put $1 in it or a lot of dollars in it. Start to try to kill the idea.
Okay, so kill can be regarded as kill as in knock it out of the park, or kill could be like dead. What do you mean by kill?
Well, I guess you were actually, you know what? It's probably both, honestly, in a way. But I think I'd start off with try to kill it to dead. And if you can't kill it to dead, then you might be able to kill it in terms of success.
Okay, cool. Love it. Yeah.
So I like kind of the twist you put on it. But so honestly, I spent 6 months basically trying to kill the idea, because usually, the idea came more or less from when we were on vacation. Like, I don't know about you, whenever I'm on vacation, you're seeing all kinds of new ideas, you're meeting new people, right?
I always say that being an entrepreneur is the most wonderful curse you'll ever go through.
Oh, of course. You never can relax. Like, I might get a day in, and then I'm starting to see ideas, and I'm talking to people, and I'm seeing stuff. So Mary Gwen, my wife, she's just, you know her. She's like, eventually just gives up and just says, okay, I'm going to go along with this. Every vacation, he's going to be going on, and she brainstorms with me and stuff. So this idea kind of came out of a vacation we had done in Canmore as a family, Canmore and Banff. And so beautiful spot, wonderful outdoor, stuff that you can do there. And we always do stuff outdoors as a family whenever we did travel. So that kind of reignited this idea of like, there's no arid adventure park in the Saint John area. And I think we could do something really incredible, something different. I mean, New Brunswick has some of those, but we imagine something different than that. And so it was really an exploration over that first 6 months, to the point where eventually it's like, you know what? I can't seem to kill the idea. So I think that means the idea needs to survive, and it needs to be built. And so it was kind of like we had no choice. We had to build it, because it was like, it was crazy not to. What's that?
You had to get some sleep. So
yeah, exactly.
We're moving on. That's good. It's good. We're going on with it.
Exactly. We're going to go here, or we're going to kill it. One of the two, but it looks like it'd be silly to kill it. So we're going to have to do it.
And did you, you talked about that you were going to do it differently. And you've heard me say many a times that you succeed in life, not alone business, and you zag when everybody else zags. So talk about that. Talk about that differentiation, because there are similar activities, locations, if you want to call it that, in New Brunswick. So how is Timbertop different from those experiences? And did you evolve into that difference, or you right from the beginning, this is the difference?
Right from the beginning. So it was more about building something that would be like, I often when I talk to startups, I say, you should build like the viral nature of the idea and the experience right into the product from the start. What do you mean by that? So what I mean is, so viral as in people can't help but want to talk about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's
right? Hopefully in a great way, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, and it should be try to be special in every aspect of the business, so that not everyone's going to hone in on one thing. But if you're special all across the board, people are going to, word of mouth is just going to happen. People will just be so excited about it and want to tell their friends, right? That's the best thing, rather than take something that's just like everything else and then try to wrap marketing around it, which you can do, but it's a lot. It is hard, and it costs a lot of money to do that when you have, instead of coming up with a differentiated special product. So that's what we did, honestly. I mean, I remember things like, rather than that going and getting a builder to build it, like most parks would be built by a builder, and it specializes in this kind of thing. And there are builders around North America that you could write a check to, and they can come in and they'll build you a park. The problem is they build you a park like everyone else's park. So it's the same thing. So you lose the differentiation. So instead it was, and honestly, with the size of our market, there's no way we can afford to build a special park in a market our size and write a check that then is going to actually make you money in the end, right? It doesn't work. We have to think outside the box. So it was like, okay, instead, can we find a couple of people that have built parks that are willing to consult with us to build our own capacity of our own building team, and then certify that after, so that we know we did everything perfectly. So we have kind of like the best of both worlds. We learn the techniques. We become a builder and an operator at the same time.
Is your dad still with us?
Yes.
He must have just been thrilled going through this journey with you. You had to have him involved with it.
Well, I think it was like, my dad I don't think he really thought I had it in me in terms of building things with my hands. As I was probably, he was always busy in the farm, like taking care of stuff. And I was off doing different things. But anything I would have been built would have been not necessarily, it would have been just like tacked together or something, right? Okay. So it was actually probably 20 years ago when I completely renovated a house we bought from like with, help of lots of different trades. But they couldn't believe that I'd actually pick up a hammer and saw and do these kinds of things, right? So I think he had gotten over that like 20 years ago. So the fact that is, he's always been an entrepreneur himself. He's always done some stuff, building things and creating stuff. So I get a bit of that, I think, from him. So yeah, anyway, but different things like that. Trying to figure out the actual challenges, because an aerial adventure park basically is a combination of zip lines and challenges between trees. And usually they're bridges or this or that, or their pulleys are involved, or zip line pulleys are involved. But the idea is to create kind of a challenge. How am I going to get from this tree to the next tree and through this challenge, right? And I have to use my strength. I have to use my brain. I have to kind of think through the problem. And so I literally probably spent, 100 hours on YouTube, literally going through first-person shooter videos or promotional videos. And then I'd see some kind of challenge and go, whoa, I haven't seen that before. I'd take a freeze grab, a screen grab, throw it in a file, print off a stack of photos at Walmart. I swear it was this high of all these different things, right? And we literally sat down with that consultant, with our builder, and said, okay, how would you build that? And they draw it all out. So then it was like, okay, how would you build that? And we spent 10 hours straight doing that with the consultant. Wow. By the time we were done, our builder, who's the main builder, was an incredible builder that I've known since I was a kid. He literally had started to figure out all the kind of the building blocks. So then we knew how to build it. It was like, okay, that's like this, but just a little bit different. And that's like this, but a little bit different. So, and then through just working with the consultants, we figured it out. So the point is, we were building a different product. Right. We were doing things differently. We were trying to get out of the box in terms of cost structure. We're trying to, and honestly, all those decisions, plus probably another 20 or so that are differentiated, have all created, a product, including, for example, recruiting staff rather than.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. That's so cool. We are aligned. Talk about that for a second, because you're a brand guy. Right. It's just like you can't have Mickey Mouse smoking a cigarette. It doesn't work. So what was the focus on the team to represent the brand? Talk a bit about that, because that's important.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So again, you try to create these, I call them, I guess it's a common phrase, but unfair competitive advantages. So what are the things built in that give you an advantage? Well, one of the things we had was our operations manager also was a teacher, and he taught at a middle school locally. Okay. And he still does. And so he has the summers off. So it works well for him. He works in the summer, and then there's weekends. Obviously, he double dips on the weekends in terms of having to work 5 days a week as a teacher, and then all weekend. He's an incredible worker, great entrepreneur, love it. Okay. Yeah. But he also, his class, he teaches every kid in the class because he teaches technology. And so he got to know I call them entrepreneurial, leadership oriented kids in that school. But he also knew other teachers that also knew entrepreneurial kids in other schools. So, and plus our kids were still just, graduating and stuff. So when we were going to these, the awards ceremonies, we're like, okay, what's that name person? Okay, we got to.
Nice.
Oh yeah, like we're just like we were scouts. We were like, okay, I like that. They got a lot. Won 4 awards in leadership. Okay, they're on the list, and then we recruit. Okay, and what the idea was is that and honestly, even on the website, we say we're looking for leaders.
Yeah,
leaders. We are looking for leaders. We're not looking for staff. We're looking for leaders, and we're looking for entrepreneurs. And we're gonna empower you. We're gonna give you aspects of the business to learn. And so each one of especially in the early days as we were building, we treated it like a startup. We got they'd be in high school, they'd be in first year, second year university, but we're bringing them in and we're exposing them to the business, the mechanics of what makes it tick, the experience we're trying to create. And we're open. We didn't just say, you're a kid, we're only going to give you this stuff, do this, repeat, No, you're going to be problem solving with us. You're going to be helping to fix things as we go. We're going to be tweaking things, making them better. We want your ideas, right? And so by doing that, their chance to be exposed to a lot more stuff, buy into the whole idea. And they were literally creating their own park. They're creating their own business with us, right? So what the incredible part of that is, Rivers, is that, it's almost like we were trying to out Disney in terms of experience, right? And so, often when you go into a business that's run by, teens or university students, and this is unfortunate, but often we'll go, drop our expectations.
Right.
Right. Which is unfair, but often happens. And it's like, so the expectations, when someone came to us, they saw, we have a whole bunch of teens. They're probably thinking, probably not going to be great, but we blow them away. Every single one would be, how are you? Great, lots of smiles, greeting. How was your day? Are you having fun? The whole bit. And so what's incredible about that is if you check out our reviews, 99% of those reviews will always talk about our staff and how incredible they are.
And your staff and you just were nominated for a national award, were you not?
Yeah, so we're fortunate to be nominated. I think it's with the Canadian Tourism Association. I think it's Outstanding Business Achievement Air Canada Award or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Air Canada Award, yeah. Yeah,
and so we're up against 2 other, I believe, I forget the name of the Ice Hotel, and I forget the name of it, Quebec City, and also a company that does video projection stuff out of Montreal, I think, or maybe it's Toronto, but yeah.
That's awesome. And of course, your team would be very excited about that. Why I mentioned that is because what you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, TimberTop has not been around for 25 years. You're like less than 5 years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we just wrapped up our 4th season. Yeah. So this weekend we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. Experiences are really about it is an experiential economy right now, and I think that those people that push the edge and from a lesson perspective for the entrepreneurs that are leaning in here, I always like to teach them, and you can touch on it, is that you can actually charge a premium price because of that experience. So how do you figure out besides the bottom line, you say, no, I got a premium experience here and I need the price to reflect that? Yeah.
So it's a premium price, though. At the same time, I'll call it a discounted price in a way, because number one, the aerial adventure parks in our province would have 5 courses. We have 12. Okay. So we're like over almost 2.5 times the size of that. Wow. Wow. We have a different model in terms of you have 3 hours of playtime on our main courses. You can climb them in any order you want. You have 3 hours of play. It's almost like going to a ski hill, where the other models are more golf course models, which is you play a course, you play the next one. Oh, it's getting too hard. I drop out. You're done. So, it's kind of like you would be getting more time, more courses. You have the gear we're using is locking carabiners. So you're locking on the courses. So like you got that extra kind of like as a parent, you're saying, oh, good. That means my kid, once they leave, they're not going to be standing on a platform 40 feet up going, oh my gosh, you're not connected. So there's like those aspects. Again, those are part of that overall, how do we knock it out of the park in every level? And so I'd say we were charging a slight premium over the kind of the going rate. But if you consider all of that stuff, we could probably charge double, but we're not. Because you have to price it for your market too. Your market only has so much elasticity, right? So we try to, and honestly, I think everyone loves the bargain, like in terms of the value they're getting. And we see that. So that's the best you can do from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to, I think the important piece of my message is, I always say we share with Relish Gourmet Burgers, we were premium priced, but we weren't expensive.
Right.
And so
exactly.
it just really allowed us to be that differentiator, ask for people to ask why, and then ultimately deliver 3 or 4 times the value of that. You got a second timber top opening, or is it?
So this is part of, again, the resilience part. So as you know, probably by just looking at like the fact that, we have snow or we have winter weather half the year, unlike, let's say, Florida, that might be able to have a tourism operation and be, have people coming all year round. We obviously up in Canada have to deal with a winter season and a summerish season, and obviously the shoulder season. So the idea was, look, we've got all this equipment. We do have staff that we want to keep around, potentially with a lot. We've invested a lot in their knowledge. Yes. So how do we create an experience where we can take that existing equipment, all that gear we have that sits there for 6 months and does nothing, and how do we create a winter experience? Because that's the other thing. There's not a lot of things you can do in the wintertime. I mean, there is, but there isn't. It's not like summer where you can literally just go outside and do stuff. And usually in winter you plan for things, right? You plan for a hike, or you plan to go skiing or whatever. But when we look at the market, there's no winter ziplining experience in the Maritimes, in the 3 provinces, our province and the 2 adjacent ones. So it's like, I think there's an opportunity to create some kind of cool experience. And again, not to just create something that everyone else has done, but let's be differentiated. So Marcel Lebrun and his wife Sheila, and Marcel used to be at Radiant Sex, so good friend. They own a ranch, a nonprofit in Steiner Mountain, which is about an hour away. And they run camps in the summertime, but in the wintertime, they generally it's not used as much. Some winter camps, but beautiful forest, 500 acres, beautiful forest, ranch, horses. It's just magical when you're there in the wintertime to see all the snow on the trees, and it's a beautiful setting. And
just for perspective for people listening, it's just outside of Sussex, right?
That's right, just outside of Sussex. And what's cool about it is that what we were able to do is create a zipline course last wintertime. That's when you build courses, is when the trees are dormant. So we built this zipline course, and it goes way out into the woods. And then at the end of the woods, we built this like a lean-to, and we'll have like fire, and you can sit around and kind of warm up. And then we'll have horse and sleigh come. You'll get on the horse and sleigh and go all the way back on the trip back on the horse and sleigh back to the ranch. And it's like as far as I know, it's the only combination like that in the entire world, but maybe there's something somewhere. But it creates this, hopefully, like a draw, right? And the beautiful thing about, I guess, in Sussex is that it kind of is epicenter between the 3 kind of major cities in New Brunswick, right? St. John. So, people jumping in the car, 40 minutes, hour, they're there, they're having some fun. It's kind of a fun experience for them to do. It's unique. And honestly, Sussex is kind of known for its winter sports because it's got the Poli Mountain. It's got like a lot of people do snowmobiling, a lot of people do ATV stuff. And it's got like a lot of different hikes, like the Parley Brook Amphitheater and even Midland Ice Cave. So it's become almost like where you go for winter activities. So it's already got a bit of that momentum. So us joining that fray, I think, is going to be good too.
Again, another lesson, ladies and gentlemen, is coming off of that. David said, okay, I want to grow. Are there other resources that exist? I don't have to recreate it. I got my friend Marcel, who's an entrepreneur. he brings value to him, brings value to you. And there's a lot of those quote unquote joint venture opportunities that exist for entrepreneurs around the region to lock arms with somebody. I just, with my business Cheftorial right now, I'm connected with a food incubator out of Chicago who was interested in our company working with their chefs. It's all perfect stuff. You just think how you can bring value to each other. That's what you've got with that.
And you know, the aspect of that, of course, is that it comes down to resources. And again, I think we have, as land Canadians, we often have to think about, we can't build it all. So how do we partner? How do we, create joint value? And so, like, as an example, a spinoff bonus for Snyder Mountain Ranch is during the summer camps, they were able to offer a portion of the course as a zipline experience to all their campers. And we came down and we operated that for them as part of the deal. So they win, we win, hopefully customers win this winter when they come and experience it. So we still got more stuff happening with David also. And I promise him just 40 minutes, but we're going longer, David, because it's such a great story. You tell me if you got to go, because the next step from there is this church. David decides, Mary Gwen decide, and he's right. Mary Gwen and I are friends a long time ago. And I sometimes wonder what she does when you go off on your ideas. But great support for you. Is that I'm going to not buy a church. You actually had the indoor component that you wanted to bring. Talk about this. And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is happening during the pandemic. So it's that resilience piece. Let's go do more. Let's innovate. Let's really look at the resources that exist. Back to you on the church, the next part of your entrepreneur story, which is so far away from an IT. Although when you started Radiant 6, weren't you in some sort of a barn somewhere in St. Mary's, I think in the area it was? We were eventually in a house for a while there, but we started off in two offices in the NRC.
Yeah, that's right.
So I will say, Mary Gwen is often not on these interviews. She prefers to, she says, you take on these interviews and stuff, but we are partners on this. We're partners on these ventures. And honestly, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff without Mary Gwen, because, all the stuff that I'm not necessarily really good at in terms of the operations side, the finance side, the HR side, all the inner workings of the business, as you know, bills got to be paid, people need to be paid, all that kind of stuff. She's taken that on, though she has said the church is the last one.
Famous last words.
There will be no more. I don't know what that means, because I already told you every 4 years I got to build something. I have no idea
you're a builder.
What's that?
You're a builder.
I know. So I'm not as sure what I'm going to do in 4 years from now. I'll have to invent some new idea to convince her, but I don't think she's going to be convinced again. Because often what happens, of course, is that she continues to add these to her back office stuff. And it's a 7-day-a-week job for her too. So she's she's being pulled along the journey. So she's fantastic and she's doing great. But so a good lesson is make sure you have a partner that is in it and loves what they're doing too, and is a fantastic partner to be 100%. With. So the church, honestly, again, it was this idea, partly came out of that trip again.
The church. Laughing about it. It's got a name, the church.
The church. Well, actually, we call it Climb. The business name is Climb 1884, and the idea is the church was built in 1884, erected. 137-year-old church, Gothic architecture. Amazing stained glass windows, absolute works of art. This cool venue. This is not the first time a climbing gym would be built inside a church. There are ones in Quebec. I think there's maybe some in Ontario. There's some in the States. There's lots in Europe. But it's still a unique venue to build, because you have this great height inside a church, right? In terms of climbing up. And this is a ropes gym. We're not there are bouldering gyms out there in their market. So we're focused on mainly ropes oriented. So top rope, lead climbing, elevable lake climbing, that kind of thing. And the idea is to basically build inside this church. The church was empty for the last 3 years. The diocese was getting rid of it. Plus the rectory next door. We ended up buying both of them because they were a package deal. So the rectory is now up for sale. But Yeah, the church basically is this beautiful piece of architecture. And it was, Mary Gwen and I, to speak to church for a second, Mary Gwen and I were married in a church that no longer exists because it was a beautiful church, and they tried, eventually the congregation shrunk. This is a common story.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They sold it. The new organization tried to make a go of it, tried to make to invent a way to pay the bills and pay the heat and keep it going, but eventually couldn't do it. It's now beautiful condos that are built on top, which is an amazing asset to have. But churches are buildings if there are no longer churches. And if you can't find a sustainable way, a business inside them, they will eventually have to go They can't survive forever.
Totally.
So we feel that this is a way to preserve this piece of history and at the same time fill a need that there's no other dedicated ropes gym like this in the province. And this is amazing amount of climbing, that outdoor climbing around the Saint John area. Literally, it's the epicenter of ropes climbing in the Maritimes, probably even Atlantic Canada in a way, because there's over 1,000 routes outdoors that have been created by the amazing organization called Ascent New Brunswick. And all the volunteers. So we have this amazing outdoor asset that a lot of people don't even know. And we have this growing industry around climbing. Just take a look at the Olympics. It now includes climbing. So it was really how do we create again another adventure thing, this time indoors, that if we're able to have staff that we can, for example, if we can't afford a full-time marketer for any one of the businesses, but if we could get 3, now we can have a full-time marketer. You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
That could maybe work part-time for both, So, and the same thing for books. If Mary Gwen really, she's going to be overwhelmed, then maybe we could hire a bookkeeper and they can do books. Do you know what I mean? So it's right. You got to be big in order to be able to scale, right?
Totally. So do you ever have anybody, the church is ready to go now? It's operational?
No. Gosh, no. We've got so much. We've got probably another 6 to 8 months. Put it this way: the basement was had been finished paneling circa 1970s basement style, which is fine for a church basement. Yeah. But it hit all kinds of stuff that they tried to fix over the years, right? And it wasn't even up to code for us to use it because you can't have paneling. So we had to, eventually decide we're going to gut it. So it's literally back to 1884, dirt, rock walls, and people come in and they're like, whoa, this is a big project. And I'm like, thanks for the reminder. You're right. It is a big project.
The reason I asked that question is that I'm curious as to how you're a marketer. You're very good at that part of the work. How are you going to bridge this is really wacky to me. It's a church because of all the statues and so on that were there, to making people feel comfortable that, no, it's just a really cool freaking building that was a church. Have you thought about that?
Yeah. So the one good thing I would say in terms of, so people feel welcome and don't feel necessarily isolated, is that the stained glass is not, I'll call it overly religious. It's actually pictures of saints, just their names. And then obviously there's Jesus and there's Mary, but they're considered they're almost presented more like historical figures as opposed to lots of messaging. The church, they were gracious. We gave them back the cross that was on the top of the church. So it's becoming more of a, less of a branded, from the past. It's starting it will take on its new brand, but it will have throwbacks to what was there before. So we're going to try to respect the history, but at the same time, and appreciate it. It's because it's beautiful art. These stained glass windows are incredible paintings that you would see in some European museum, so
cool.
Appreciate that, but at the same time also create, blend the new in there at the same time. Because the cool part is church really was about collecting the community.
Totally.
This is still going to be about collecting community. It's just going to be a climbing community.
Yeah. It's so think about those days when David was younger, he was going to church, and now we wanted to climb up all the walls and all the pews anyway. Now you're creating those atmospheres for those kids that want to do that.
Well, a lot of, your parents might be like, Rivers, did you go to church this Sunday? And now you can say you did.
Linked insurance, exactly. I love it. So that doesn't stop there, my friend. You then went on and you brought back in what you're very good at, which is mentoring, coaching, connecting, educating, whatever you want to call it, and created this organization called Market Swell, I think is what it's called. We're kind of heading towards the end of our journey, of our conversation. One, there's so many lessons that came off of this. The second one, the last one, by the way, what we just talked about is take a look at that innovation with that building. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're challenged with something, just try to look at things differently, like a church. I did want to ask you this. The insurance companies, you must have interesting conversations with them as you're building your companies.
Yeah, though I will say that the good news is, I guess, the aerial adventure park business and the climbing business have both been around for a lot of time that there are actual packages. So you're not blazing new trails. Though I will say insurance has gone way up. And I don't know if they're just using the pandemic as an excuse or whatever it is, but it's gone like skyrocketed. For no reason. It's not like all of a sudden there's more incidents. Nope. It's just, they're just like, okay, reset, time to make up for some lost time. But this time last year, gas was 50 cents a liter. Now it's $1.60 for whatever reason. Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's a necessity in order to do the business. So back to Market Swell. Can you talk about? Talk about that need that you identified. I think it's always been there. I'm always an advocate. Is that we really need to teach entrepreneurs more about selling and then getting investors. Not necessarily getting investors and then selling their products or services. And so marketing is one of those voids in the marketplace that I think really can take advantage of the type of organization that Market Swell is. So can you talk about that, what the pain point is that you're serving, and what's a little bit of the background on that? Well, I think you kind of touched on it there. Really, it's often startups are started by technology founders, right? So they think of a way to solve a problem, which is fantastic. But often the reason why a business survives is because it finds a way to reach customers and solve problems. And, you know what I mean? And do it at scale. And often the two ways it does that is, yes, create a great product, but you have to find a way to reach them and have the right strategies. And that's marketing. And you have to be able to sell, which is a combination of where marketing and sales kind of work together. And a lot of startup founders don't really have that appreciation. Let's say they went through an engineering degree or a science degree or stuff like that. They haven't got the background. It doesn't mean they're not capable. There's amazing, capable engineers that can do all that. It's just they don't have the background to have that. Right. The other issue is that, did you take a business degree? You took a business degree, right? Or commerce? Yeah. So can you remember your product management course that you took?
Oh, I can't remember dick all. I got an MBA also. I got an MBA. Dude, no. My education came after my education. Well, put it this way. I don't remember a lot of the courses. I do remember like the fact that there was no product management course. Right. Okay.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure there wasn't one for you either.
No, I don't remember it either.
No. And I bet you there was no sales course either, because I don't remember taking
definitely not sales. No, not a sales at all.
There were marketing courses, there were advertising courses, but there weren't like product management courses. There weren't sales courses. So, and honestly, marketing, like a lot of marketing, and it's a lot to cover, Grant, a lot of ground to cover. They don't quite, like most of the startups around here are B2B startups. They're not B2C. There's a lot of B2C startups or business consumer startups down in like the Silicon Valley area. You often see a lot of, like those, like the social network companies and all that stuff. But most of the companies in Atlantic Canada are B2B when in terms of startups. And, marketing for B2B is almost like a hybrid between sales, really, like, because it's based on relation. You know who you're dealing with. There's typically a short list. It's B2B. It's not like millions of people. We're talking about thousands or hundreds. And literally it's relationship building. It's a totally different beast. And so number one, there's a lack of marketing talent, leadership talent out there, because there just hasn't been like that pipeline created in the university necessarily. Right. Not a lot of B2B necessarily background stuff either. And honestly, just, there's the startup community is growing so fast. There's just like everyone's kind of stealing from everyone. You know what I mean? That way. So the idea that you're going to be able to just continue to steal from one another is never going to solve the problem. And you're always going to be impeding the growth of startups if you don't find a way to fill those roles. And by the way, it is not a fill the role after like the third round of financing. Oh yeah, I guess we need a marketer. They should be there at the beginning. You should 100%. Be baking this stuff in. We just had these lessons we were talking about on this. So it's got to be baked in from the start. And the problem is there's just not enough talent. So it's not going to grow on trees, literally. So you're going to have to grow it. And so the concept of MarketSwell was, let's create an accelerator cohort program that you can have your marketing leaders that you've said, this is the person I want. They've got a ton of potential, but they literally need mentoring. They need to be accelerated in terms of their being able to think at an executive level or, strategically, or how it all fits together. And, from product to building community to building demand to, you name it, like all across the board, building culture of an organization. Right. So that's really where the need came from. And it was like, okay, well, the crazy part was, had I thought of this idea 2 years ago, video calls like this didn't really exist.
No, totally.
Right. So a cohort would have been, okay, you got to put people in cars. They got to go to a specific spot. They sit in the classroom, blah, blah, blah. This time, literally, I've only met one of my cohort physically only because she happened to come to Timbertop and I went and saw her, made a purpose of going to say, hey, how are you in the trees? I've never met anyone else. It's all been virtual. So, the core members have been Halifax and Saint John and Fredericton and even down like in Newfoundland and down into Denver. Like it's all over the place, but they all have Atlantic Canadian roots. They're all Atlantic Canadian based startups. And
is that on purpose by you?
Well, partly because, I'm here. I know that community. It was easy. I knew the demand. I knew a lot of those CEOs, so they would know me and they'd know people that if they didn't know me, they know people that knew me. So it's really kind of getting started. And honestly, this is the home team. I'd love to give the home team a bit of a boost, right? And get it going. But honestly, as a virtual thing, it can be from anywhere, really. So, so it really comes down to it's a combination of almost like take a MBA, executive MBA, smash it together with one-on-one coaching, smash it together with like strategic consulting, and smash it together with like a cohort, like a Wallace McKinney Institute kind of cohort. Bring it all together. And the idea is I'm like a coach on the ice. I work side by side. We have a list of things we want to cover off on B2B marketing, but I'm not going to force feed it. I'm not going to say this is the topic every week and we go through a curriculum. I'm going to say, what are the current problems you're dealing with right now? And let's use those as teaching moments. Bring in my experience. We'll bring in the structure. We'll talk about it. We'll work together on those problems side by side, and we'll resolve stuff and improve stuff in the business as we go, as we're teaching. And then at the same time, we'll do like master classes and cover 3 topics a week as a cohort. So the cohort starts to get to know each other, and there are common things that each one of them want. So we'll kind of talk to them as a group. And the idea is that at the end of it, the cohort also has all of these other members that they can start to communicate with and get support from. And we'll build a bit of a community around marketing. And it's been great. They've kind of all come together. They've gotten to know each other. And now with the next cohort, probably starting in January, they'll be kind of like the newcomers, but they'll kind of also be access to the same cohort. So we'll build up this movement of knowledge and support around building startups and accelerating.
Around that conversation about marketing. So you've gone from startup seller to we do marketing. That's our shit. Yeah, I love it. So I can really see that it really is a representation of similar to a Wallace McKinney cohort that's happening, but again with that singular focus. How are you feeding your pipeline for MarketSwell? Or is it just you just reaching out and saying, this is what I'm doing, the elements of the program? Do you have one of your team that want to play a role? Is it viral? How do you?
Yeah, it has mostly been, I guess, word of mouth and in articles covering it. You know what I mean? Like in terms of, when we announced it last year, I already had like 3 CEOs that kind of, part of it came to, they just kind of like, I was talking to 3 different CEOs, they all have the same problem. I'm like, okay, I can't go and like consult directly. If I do it for one, then I'm not helping the other one. So like, how do I create a program so I can help them plus maybe more people and do it in a scalable way? So, but then literally word of mouth got out. I've got a pipeline of a whole bunch of people that couldn't do it last year, but probably want to do it this year. Plus just other people hearing it word of mouth and saying, hey, can I be on the list? All that kind of stuff. So honestly, in the next month or two, I'm going to have to reach out to those crew and say, what do you think? Are you ready this year? Does it make sense? Have you found, some people want to be in the program, but they haven't found their marketing leader yet, So I think there's that. What's interesting too, we're also exploring the concept right now, and I don't know where it's going to go, but there's another organization that has been focusing more on sales.
Yeah,
and they're
involved with that, isn't he?
Well, Chris is doing fantastic stuff. He actually was one of our guest speakers. He's been doing great stuff with UNB, but someone different. But the idea of maybe creating another track, a CRO track, a Chief Revenue Officer track, and maybe finding ways to scale it up even more, because it's not just about marketing leaders. There's all kinds of marketers we need for startups. So and salespeople.
That's so brilliant. I love it all around. 2 questions left. You're only allowed to give one piece of advice on marketing, and then someone's going to tell you can't speak ever again. What's that one piece of advice that you would give?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's not a skill testing question.
Yeah, and you're like, I have only minutes here. Okay, so I would say that on the B2B side, it's about often it's about really spending time with customers and getting to know them and anyone else in the industry that's passionate about that stuff. So finding your community and learning about that community and what is driving where they want to go and being part of that and helping to accelerate like the vacuums of new kind of approaches of solving this and making sure your product can fill that vacuum. Like, so it's really a demand gen kind of field, but so many people do not, especially on B2B, do not think about the idea that you have to find your community globally. And if you do that, everything just falls into place. Most startups, they just ignore that. And it's a big mistake.
It's a huge mistake. I remember when I was working with ONB, we brought the business model canvas into play. The right side's customers, the inside or the left side is engineering, and the amount of entrepreneurs that led with engineering without even having these conversations around customers blew my mind away. And spending thousands and thousands of dollars without having a conversation with a customer. Last question is, of course, people are leaning in and saying, man, I want to hang out with this dude. What's the best way for them to connect with you? Is LinkedIn your go-to? What's the focus for connecting?
Hanging out? Well, that would be on a climbing wall in about 8 months.
Right.
Or up in a tree in about 2 months. Literally hanging there with your gear. I guess reaching out if you want to connect on any one of these ideas. You can easily find me on LinkedIn, fire me a message. It's usually the easiest way to get a hold of me. So, again, collaborations, interest in any of these types of things. You have to be thinking outside the box in order to try to accomplish all this stuff. So I'm always open to listening to potential other ideas or working with other people to solve things. So for sure. Yeah.
Well, you're brilliant, dude. And who was I to think that it was just going to be 40 minutes? I love hanging out with you. You've always been kind and hanging out with me, giving me your time, giving the community time, and just keep on rocking. We're blessed to have you in Atlantic, Canada, let alone in New Brunswick. So appreciate all you and Mary Glenn are doing to drive the spirit of entrepreneurship. So thanks very much. Thank you, dude. We're going to be in touch for sure.
All right. Thanks, Rivers. See you later.
Thanks for your time. Cheers, man.
See ya.